Hello, this is Diana, and today we are going to do a ticket retrospective. There's a ticket that had some issues. So we're going to look at what happened during the ticket and see if we can learn from that, and also see if we can learn how to do effective ticket retrospectives. So let's start with me sharing my screen. Can you read any of that? Is it big enough?
It's pretty small.
Okay, I'll make it bigger, but then I'll have to like scroll around. So that's a little bit negative, but better to be able to read it. Can you read that? Did I lose you?
I tried to resize and it didn't like that. So Zoom said, go away. Back now. Yeah, that's very readable.
Okay. Okay, so this is, I'm going to give you in the chat the retrospective issue, which has a link to the Zendesk ticket and also to the PDF.
I have the ticket up.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, and your doc.
Okay, then I won't do that. So.
Were you using a template for this? Or just making it? Like response and commentary, activity commentary?
I just made a spreadsheet. I tried to do it as a mermaid diagram, and that was a waste of time. Oh my gosh. Okay, so ticket 179897. I won't say the customer since we're going to probably publish this video. But in the beginning, they didn't say much. So they didn't give us a lot to go on. Server unstable, trouble serving pages, dropping tasks. So the obvious thing, we said, hey, give us more detail. Maybe send a GitLab SOS file. So the next day, they sent screenshots of CI issues and a 500 error. They also uploaded to GitLab SOS and said, oh yeah, we had problems upgrading the runner as well. So good news, they sent GitLab SOS. Bad news, we checked the GitLab SOS and they had gone in and stripped out everything in var log. So it didn't have the actual logs that we wanted to get from the GitLab SOS. So then we said, well, maybe send us the GitLab control tail output. And on the side, we mentioned, oh, maybe you couldn't upload your runners because of the GPG key changing. I'm calling this out in a separate column here because I'm convinced that anytime we do anything like this in a ticket, like an alternative subject, it detracts from the main focus of the ticket, and that's I think in this ticket in particular, it really caused us to get off track and take unnecessarily long to fix this problem. Anyway, so that was on the second day. We asked for GitLab control tail. On the fourth day, they sent the GitLab control tail output. We didn't do anything. They did manage to get their runner upgraded. But now they're saying, I want to roll back. And we're like, nope, rollback's not an option. And this was on a Friday. We said, nope, rollback's not an option. And then we just left them hanging. They're like, so now what? And nobody replied until Monday. But so they had sent us the GitLab control tail output on Thursday. Nobody looked at it. Nobody looked at it. And then on Monday, after we left them hanging all weekend, we asked them for GitLab control tail output again, and they sent it again. Then they noticed another thing while they were. I think this was about log rotation. While they were doing the GitLab control tail, they got an error about logs being inaccessible. And I just think they happened to be doing the tailing while the logs rotated. But so anyway, we asked them to set up a call about the inaccessible logs. Like, why are we not focusing on this 500 error? We did happen to notice an error about number of DB connections, and we mentioned it to them. And we asked for their GitLab.rb file, and they sent it to us, but we didn't tell them to do anything. So the next day, they're like, "Oh, what about this not enough DB connections thing?" So we asked them for PG stats. On the side, we're still trying to schedule a call about this inaccessible logs thing. And they actually put the ticket on hold until the call got scheduled, which is why the customer came back with like, what about the not enough DB connections? It's so painful to look back through this. Anyway, finally on Wednesday of the second week, we told them to change the number of DB connections and run reconfigure. The customer said, "Is reconfigure all that's required?" And we said, yes. We were incorrect. It turns out our documentation was wrong. Our documentation was partially wrong. If you look at the template file for the GitLab.rb, when it talks about Postgres configuration options, it actually calls out if you change these configuration options, you have to restart Postgres. If you change these configuration options, you can just reconfigure. But that was not mentioned anywhere else. So anyway, we told them, yep, you can just reconfigure on Wednesday. On Friday, they called back. They're pretty pissed at this point, for good reason, I would say. And they escalated. They said, it's still something wrong. So that was a Friday that they asked for escalation. And so nobody responded until Monday, when a MIA manager saw their escalation and called. What's interesting is this is a West Coast customer, but up to this point, pretty much EMEA had been doing all the responding on it. I don't know why somehow the communication was.
That's tied to the SLA clock, right? Because then if they responded West Coast time, then it wouldn't expire until immediate time.
Yeah. Well, maybe. Anyway, so once the EMEA manager escalated it, I took a look, and so I asked them for production logs to see if since they had made this configuration change on the last Wednesday, I wanted to see if they were still seeing the error after that. And yes, we still saw the errors on the Friday after they had made it. So I found a command to check the max connections in the DB console, so you could see what Postgres thought the connections were when it was running. And I actually tested it on a test system and confirmed that, yes, it did require a PG restart to update the max connections. So they did the restart, they tested some things, and everything that previously had been failing that this guy, I mean, he wasn't an actual user, he's just an administrator. So he did some small tests, but we were pretty certain that it was fixed at that point. 14 days after they filed the ticket. They did come back later and on a separate ticket, they said, oh, by the way, you can tell them about that other ticket. Everything's great. But we were sure on this day, on the 23rd, that it was fine. After they filed the ticket on the 9th. I did create an MR to update the documentation to clarify what requires reconfigure versus restart. That documentation MR is still waiting to be merged, but at least there's going to be fixes. So there we go. And so interestingly, they had scheduled this call about the logs. And the call that got scheduled was with me. They couldn't share their screen. And I came into the call asking, what about the DB connections? But they said they had already made that change, but they weren't sure yet if they had seen any change. So they wanted to wait a couple more days to see the result. And so that was the couple more days was when they escalated, and the manager and I mean, so many problems. I just so I have some questions for you. Do you think that this format is useful at understanding what went wrong, what we maybe could have done better? I think
Yeah, it seems pretty readable.
every incident I think is gonna be different. I tried to do this color coding to say, like, hey, they sent us what we asked for. Here's where they sent us the output, and here's where we didn't look at it. um, here's where we gave them wrong information. I mean, is this what should trigger a retrospective like this? Particularly bad incidents, or just something we think we can learn from?
Yeah, what's the expected deliverable?
And will people actually take the time to review and learn?
We do retros on SATs that are negative, right?
Sort of. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I had a manager reach out to me on one, and he said, what could we have done better? And I was like, I don't remember. But it was just like a one line thing. But it wasn't something that was bad to the degree that this is bad. I mean, this is over the top bad. 14 days to figure out they didn't have enough DB connections and get it reset. And I don't think the customer had ever submitted a response to this. I don't think they get asked about satisfaction on every ticket.
Oh, I thought it was. I don't know. The survey gets sent like 3 days after the ticket closes.
Yeah.
And the one thing, missing piece of data, how many of the responses that we were making were because the SLA on the ticket was in need to respond now states?
So the interesting thing was on most of these days, there were actually multiple back and forths with the customer. So like on this day, we asked them for GitLab control tail output again, and they sent it again. And then we said, oh, we see an error about DB connections. And we asked them for GitLab.rb, and then they sent it. So that day, there was multiple back and forth. And we asked them to set up a call about the inaccessible log thing. So it wasn't really that, they were getting one response a day.
Hard to speculate on which component of our workflow would fill the gap.
Well, I mean, I think that the big failure here was not looking at this log output when it was sent. Because it was sent on Thursday and we didn't look at it. We actually asked for it again and didn't look at it until the following week, the Monday. So we got it on Thursday, we asked for it again on Monday, and then looked at it on Monday. That to me was the biggest failure. And I mean, they were expressing severe frustration along here. I mean, like when they said they wanted to roll back, I mean, they were saying my users are ready to get rid of GitLab altogether. So they were very frustrated even during the first week, and somehow we managed to drop the ball. It seems like maybe there should be like some sort of overall paragraph that describes sort of in general what happened, and then you could see on a day-by-day basis here. Or maybe just an itemized list of here's where we dropped the ball. They sent us the log data that we asked for and we didn't look at it for 3 days. And even worse, on the because up here when they talked about the runner, they said what runner version they were running, or that they were trying to upgrade the runner. And then later, we asked if the runner version matched the GitLab runner or matched the GitLab version. And he's like, hello, did you not see? I said that I was trying to upgrade the runner and couldn't upgrade it. So it was like, at least some amount of it was not reading through the whole ticket. And I think that some of that is because there was so much back and forth on the ticket that it would have been easy to miss.
4-hour SLA. So it means it was bouncing 2 times for every shift. Or for every expected 8-hour shift.
So maybe it was the SLA clock that was triggering the responses.
We're looking at this, right? So like one of the responses, November 10th at 3:40, the customer responds an hour later after our response, and then we respond 8 hours later. So the ticket must have breached. The
Unless,
customer responds 20 minutes after we respond. So the customer's response time is like 20, 30 minutes. And then we respond 2.5 hours later, November 10, 15:29 UTC. We respond then an hour and a half later. Actually, no. The customer responded both of these. So we respond 12:39 November 10. Customer responds 13:09, then again at 15:29. So the original SLA would have been 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. But we responded at 17, so it would have been an hour breached. So the response was, we'll take a look at it and get back to you, which that feels like one of the crew
yeah,
holding reply styles for
yeah, just
whatever.
punting it down to stop the clock.
Yeah. And then 17:40, we have some debug going on. 18:40, which is what? 17, 18, an hour and a half, 2 hours later. So it took 2 hours to really dig into this. And then we make a legit reply. 17, 18, 19, 20, 3 hours, 3.5 hours later after our holding reply. So it took, yeah, 3.5 hours to get a good response coming out. And then customer replied the next day. No, 2 days later, November 10th. The customer responded on the 12th at 17:54.
Yeah, there was a skipped day at the very beginning there.
And then they responded again on the 18th. Yeah, so I think very much it was the 4-hour SLA. A lot of the times for things that would come through, the responses were within, well, actually the ticket was already expired, it looks like, in many of these responses. So we were already breached. So we were trying to answer a 2.5 hour ticket in a breach timeline. I think, yeah, I think we need to change the SLA thing.
I've said many times, a lot of people, when a ticket is about to breach or is already breached, they're like, oh, let's just get some response and then work on things later. I'm like, no, I'm going to work the ticket and I'm going to take however long it takes to work the ticket. And if it breaches, too bad.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to kick the can down the road.
Do we have a specific thing in the handbook about that?
No, I don't think so.
In appearing this morning, I had a ticket that was going to expire within whatever 8 minutes. So we sent one reply saying, here's what it looks like. We're continuing to look, though. We'll get back with you. So that prevented a breach. But then 15 minutes later, after our first response, we sent a second, more in-depth response.
And that's good. If you can do that, but I think most people, they send a response to stop the breach, and then they go on to the next one that's fixing the breach. And
There was an example of that in this ticket because we posted a response saying, I'm not sure why it's doing that. I'm going to do some more digging, but there was not an additional follow-up.
yeah,
But he even said he couldn't send the logs. He couldn't send the GitLab SLS logs. He said, there's lots of things I can't send you.
and then he did.
Yeah, later with the production log. But it seems like for asking for a production log, he's okay with that, but he wasn't okay with sending an SLS.
I don't know. I mean, and also he said he couldn't share his screen the first time I got on the call with him, but then I think the second time I got on the call with him, he did share his screen.
Huh.
Or maybe, I don't know.
Oh yeah, for the WebEx. Oh, maybe he couldn't in Zoom, but he could in WebEx.
Maybe. I don't know.
Hmm. So what do we have a follow-up for the retro to see if our documentation details how to handle a breached ticket to form a valid response instead of a timeline bump.
I mean, it could be that maybe this ticket suffered because nobody ever assigned it to themselves.
Well, we can't really assign a 4-hour ticket because that means it would go breached, in our same shift. So I think our current policy is we don't assign 4-hour tickets.
Is that a policy?
I don't know. That's kind of speculated on because I don't know. I'm quoting from something that came out of a Slack discussion, but I don't know if that was actual statement or not.
I don't
Because the assignment, one of the positions where an assignment model breaks down is a 4-hour SLA, just because unless you're going to stay up for 24 hours responding every 4 hours, how do you do that?
Yeah,
And if you take a 4-hour ticket, what happens when it expires 4 hours after your shift?
right.
Because they responded, do
Yeah.
they put in a holding reply now, or do they try to redo whatever you did?
Well, and if they have all hours, um, I didn't look if they had all region support.
It looks like they're set to AMER, but where did they set it to AMER? Did they originally, or was that later on?
It would be hard. We'd have to look through the data. Yeah, I definitely think that the whole kick the can down the road um,
Looks like they set it.
caused some suffering in this ticket. And I also think that dealing with other things like runner GPG keys and logs being inaccessible distracted from, I mean, because as soon as they say 500 error, I am solely focused on, I want to see the logs and I want to see what's in the logs. And I don't really care about anything else at that point until that 500 error is resolved. That's the only thing I'm focused on fixing. And anything else can come up later after we fix that 500 problem.
Maybe we should update the handbook in somewhere related to debugging 500s.
The interesting thing in this case is the Postgres not enough data, not enough connections error doesn't actually show up in the logs as a traditional file. Like you don't see the internal server error in the log. You see the PG not enough data, not enough connections. But if you're searching for the 500 error in the log, you don't see it. So that's another little twist in here that's a little bit abnormal. Okay, so let's put this in the, I'm putting this in the Google Doc. What is our process about assignments for our SLA? And also, what was the other one that you had? What
Troubleshooting a 500 or to identify to zoom in on a log, a relevant log for a 500.
The one before that.
Assignment for all region.
Um,
Assignment for a 4-hour ticket.
no.
Do we have a rewind in the video?
I guess I'll have to go back through the video and it wasn't about assignments. Oh, it was about what do you do when you do a kick the can response? Do you then focus on the real response?
Yeah, a holding reply needs to have a follow-up reply. I'm kind of like, I like your workflow there because I like the stat to show up for the SLA chart saying we didn't have time to get to this ticket, or the way that our current flow is, we have a breacher because the metrics on the back end of this show a problem. If we have holding replies that prevent a breach, then it can mask a a larger underlying problem.
Which is kind of why at one point I had brought up, like, is the SLA is focusing on hitting our SLA times focusing on the wrong thing.
I think that's where assignment kind of comes, assignment works in that way, because if you are prioritized to respond to your assigned tickets, that means when the customer responds, now you can respond. So we don't have an SLA. SLA becomes irrelevant.
Well, and I mean, what I always do every time I respond on a ticket, I CC myself on that
Thank
ticket.
you.
And as soon as the customer replies on it, then I jump back in and look at what their reply was.
Same. I like doing that because it also allows me to keep that train of thought, because it'll be fresh. Some of that research into their issue would be fresh.
Yeah.
But at
If
the
you,
same time, if you're also pushed to answer breaching tickets in the SLA, then I don't know if we have that clarified to say like your own assigned breachers should be higher priority, or breach prevention, or just general responses.
I mean, I think that all of us are constantly faced with, setting priorities of what's the most important thing for me to look at right now at this point in time. And I think everybody has sort of their own metrics to decide. I mean, maybe it's oh, I know what to do next on this ticket, so I'm going to deal with this ticket. And I don't know what to do next on that ticket, so I'm going to set it aside for the moment until I have free time to actually try to dig in more. And that free time never comes.
Yeah.
I think
Or
that
also
happens. I think that happens a lot.
the potential for bystander also fits in that same style scenario, just where I don't know what to do next on this ticket, so I'll let somebody else respond to it.
Yep.
Whereas I think like in the handbook, I think we explicitly state that if you're not sure what to do with it, then collaborate,
Yeah.
start pinging folks. But that is kind of difficult to do depending on the individual workflow,
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of variables in here. On the other hand, for a high priority ticket to go for 2 weeks, you would have thought that, and the customer being clearly dissatisfied for most of that 2 weeks, you would have thought that there would be some more focused effort on it.
This was their production environment too, right? So they could have pinged emergency at any point
Yep.
and didn't. I wonder, we've had some issues in the US federal where we've had to remind customers.
Yeah, it may be that they don't know
Yeah.
about emergency.
In US federal, it also seems like a lot of the time the person that handles the account, like the TAM, is talking with like a manager or somebody else, not the actual dev team using it. So when the dev team has a problem and their manager's not available, they don't know how to escalate. They don't even know their TAM. So they'll just pop a ticket and say like, this is what's going wrong, but they don't have any. Half the time too, like the way that we have Fed set, US Fed is like tickets that aren't on the Salesforce get rejected. So what'll happen, the random email opens a ticket, gets rejected, then it gets to back, then that gets to the TAM, and then through the manager, product manager, and then back down.
Because that person wasn't on their list of people.
Because that person happened to be on the dev team, not on the actual team that handles, acquisitions or whatever it is called when government buys stuff.
So,
and I don't think we did not mention, doesn't look like in that ticket emergencies either. No, it doesn't appear in the search.
okay, well,
So we should have another follow-up as a product, or at the retro, to talk with their TAM. Do they have a team? Account owner Russ. They don't have a TAM. But maybe we follow up with the customer to say,
Do you know how to file an emergency ticket?
Yeah, friendly reminder, here's our contact info for creating emergencies. If your production is impacted,
It seems to me
that's,
like they got that detail on another ticket shortly after this one, but I could be wrong.
that would be good.
Or maybe I told them on when I got on the call with them. I don't really remember. For some reason I had it in my mind that they were definitely told about emergency, but I could be wrong. So it seemed it seems like on my little retrospective issue that I created, I should put these comments slash questions that we had about process. So at least it's all there in one place. And maybe there should be some MRs around process that come out of that as well.
Yeah, I was trying to think like what's a positive, yeah, deliverable out of a retro that we can say like we can fix a hole or a gap in our processes.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
think
mean, a quick Google for like database connection errors doesn't return anything conclusive right off. Docs.
well, so part of the thing was they had just upgraded, and they had just changed from Unicorn to Puma. And um, the reason they needed more database connections is because um, we calculate the number of Puma processes based on the amount of memory on the system, but we don't calculate the number of database connections. Like we don't automatically set the number of database connections in the same way. So like we have the default 200, but more than one customer ran into this when they did that upgrade, where we actually calculated a large number of Puma processes, and that caused them to exceed the default max database connections. And I'm pretty sure I filed an MR on that against Omnibus, that we should be, checking the database max connection setting based on how many Puma processes we're recommending.
Yeah, redo the formula
Right.
to calculate resources. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that was something that came out of that whole upgrade thing with several customers. And it may not have been this particular customer where I did that, because I think it might have been before this customer. But yeah, it's a thing. Maybe I'll add that to the list of things to check on, to double check on. Okay. Thanks for
That was
dropping
fun. Right on. The Diana show.
in. Feels weird being Diana show.
I dig it.